Good morning. This is about 8:30 in the morning in Liverpool in England, and this is the fifth of the Steward Training videos for the Zen Peacemakers, for the Zen Peacemaker Circle model. So today I'm going to talk briefly about the idea of consensus voting or sociocracy as we learned it first of all in the Zen Peacemakers. And to me, this is part of the revolutionary idea of what the Zen Peacemaker Circles are, because pretty much every other form of spiritual practice I've done has involved someone leading a group and telling all the members of the group how they should perform, behave, what practices to do, how to do them. So you create a model of a kind of difference. There are different kinds of people in the creative space. There are leaders and there are followers. And okay, sometimes there can be kind of a movement between these two spaces so that someone who was a follower becomes a leader and vice versa. But overall, this structure is what powers the whole process. And you'll see that replicated in many different kinds of spiritual communities, and obviously not just spiritual communities, but all kinds of communities. What's different about the Zen Peacemaker Circles is that we have the idea that everyone all together is the owner and the leader and the teacher and the student and the listener and the receptive one in the circle. So if you like, on every seat there is a teacher and on every seat there is a student. So this is our idea, but that's a wonderful lofty idea, and people often say to me, well, how do you actually manage that then? How are you actually going to put that into practice? Because we know from our own experience that collaborative projects often go badly awry. So I've been using for years the word consensus decision making from my own reading and my own practice of sociocracy. But it was interesting to hear Gina Moore, who's a really experienced circle organizer and lifelong Zen practitioner in the States, talking last week on Zoom, and she used the phrase informed consent. So this gives a different kind of feeling, because consensus makes it sound like everyone has to have the same idea and everyone has to agree with each other, whereas with informed consent, the idea is, are we going to follow this course of action together? If we are, do we all consent to this course of action? Now, you may consent to something you don't actually choose as your first option. So you could have chosen for yourself, for example, we're going to go and we're going to have a walk across Britain to raise money for charity. But someone else says, no, we're not going to have a walk across England. We're going to create a small charitable company in the city we're living in, and that's going to be our Zen Peacemaker project. And you both discuss it and you have a vote within the group, and it comes down to the fact that maybe like 9 members of the group want to do the walk across Britain, and 1 member still wants to do the project in our own town. And how do we choose at that point if we're genuinely having this as a group process? And the only way we can do it is by saying, can you live with this? It's not a case of everyone having to agree, because we can't always agree, and we're not going to always agree. And part of learning, I think, to be a peacemaker and a spiritual practitioner in a group is to realize we can't always have our own way. So the question put to a person at that point is, can you live with it? And if you can live with it, fantastic. And if not, well, genuinely, we operate as a group, so we don't go through with either decision. In a big group, you can imagine this becoming very, very frustrating, because if there were 100 people, the chances of getting 99 of them to agree something but 1 of them also to agree is almost impossible to imagine. However, in a small group of people who are who are working together and are trying their best to really understand each other and bear witness to each other's lives and reflect on who and what we are together, then it's not so unlikely that we can, over time, learn what moves us emotionally and intellectually and spiritually, and learn to work together as a group. So this is the idea. Consensus decision making, or much more appropriately, informed consent. And we call it sociocracy, which comes from a Dutch idea of a guy called Gerard Edinburgh. And I mean, to get right to the process, so if something needs to be chosen in the circle, initially just do it in an informal way and ask people what they want. And I think consensus can happen quite quickly if you have the idea there that consensus can happen. And then once you have a big decision to make, like a project you want to do, or maybe choosing a book you're going to study for the next 6 months or something like that, then we can use this idea of sociocracy. And the way we do it is to have a vote. So first of all, we discuss what the thing is we're trying to do, and then we go around and have a vote, but an open vote where everyone says, I'd like to do it this way, you can do it that way, and then we see what everyone wants. And when we've had a vote like that, then we ask, do we want to stay the same vote or do we want to change? And the way we can change is to say, one by one, people go around and say why they chose to vote after all the discussion, why they made that decision, or why they think they made that decision anyway. And then, having heard everyone's reasons for making the vote, then they can change the vote. And then we have another round of voting, and people can maybe change the way they're voting and maybe do a different vote. So then we have a new vote. And again, maybe now there is consensus and everyone has agreed, or maybe there's still a range of different opinions or variation. And we can keep doing this and keep listening to each other and keep doing our best to understand where we're all coming from. And once we've done that and we think we know where we're all coming from and there's no change, then if anyone's left out, then at that point we ask, can you live with the decision? And if you can, that's the decision that's made. And if we can't, then we don't make the decision. And this is the process of sociocracy. So you discuss what you want to vote. Then you have a vote, but an open vote, because this is not a secret power-based community. We're not trying to enforce any kind of decision on anyone, which is not the usual kind of democracy. This is a much deeper democracy. So we have the vote, and then people explain why they voted the way they did, which gives people a chance to change their vote. And we can have this round of voting several times with maybe choose someone to facilitate it so that we can do it. And then at the end, when there are no more changes happening, then the facilitator can ask any leftover people, can you honestly live with this decision? And I think at that point it's worth saying that what we don't want to do is coerce anyone into a decision. So, I mean, in the life of a circle, obviously people do. I mean, we make decisions for relationship purposes. We don't just make decisions based on kind of like rational thought, and we shouldn't. I think we live as people in relationship. So it's not that I'm saying that nobody should go along with the group for the sake of group harmony, because that's part of life in a group. But on a deeper level, everyone should feel that it really is their own consent that's being engaged in making a decision. And I think an exploration of what this consent is and what it feels like genuinely to be a consenting party to a decision is maybe something quite revolutionary in our culture. It's not something we do most of the time. So this is it. This is a very brief introduction to the idea of sociocracy. And we recommend you use it as a basis for all of the decision making and all of the plans and all of the direction, the spiritual direction of the Zen Peacemaker Circle is guided by the informed consent of its members, having activated their minds, their intellects, their imaginations, their hearts. Bring yourselves to life, bear witness to each other, have a sense of the space of not knowing. So you're prepared to go in totally random or different directions than perhaps you would yourself have gone, and then have this principle of informed consent at its heart. And then it can spread to different activities in the circle in lots of different ways. It doesn't just have to be a case of doing a formal sociocratic vote every time you want to do something. You get to know each other, you feel each other, you feel where you're coming from, you feel where you want to be going to, and find different energies and spaces and decision-making processes that work for you, but keep this idea of the tool of sociocracy at the heart of what a Zen Peacemaker Circle is, and you'll find it's an incredibly powerful engine to change your way of experiencing. So this is a shorter video than usual. So I'll finish with an example from my own practice. So in the Zen Peacemaker Circle in Manchester, we had people coming along who didn't want to practice silent meditation. They had a background in things like Nembutsu chanting from the Nicheren Buddhism, and there was some from Pure Land Buddhism who are used to chanting Namo Amida Bu, Namo Amida Bu, Namo Amida Bu in various ways. And I think in some ways they were testing the water. So can we sit together? Can we have this Zen Peacemaker Circle and not be forced to do Zen practice? So I think they tested the water out a little bit. And then this time I was the steward, and I'd been helping set up the group, and I personally, I like Zen meditation very much. So when people didn't want to have this silent period, was it something we could go along with? Was there a way of incorporating this? And we explored it, and it was difficult, and people challenged each other, and finally what we ended up with was we met for a whole day, usually on a Sunday, once a month, and we had a morning session of maybe 10 o'clock till 12 o'clock, which included silent meditation and zazen for those who wanted that. And then in the afternoon, we started maybe at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so we could have a shared lunch together, and then practice together in the afternoon. And then we had kind of other forms of practice. So sometimes we would have chanting, sometimes we would have silence, sometimes we would have a different religion altogether. So those who wanted to focus more on, if you like, Zen practice, did so in a morning session. And then the rest of the Zen Peacemaker Circle met in the afternoon with more openness. And if we'd gone into this knowing we have to have silence, we have to have one way of practicing, then we couldn't have reached that. So by having not knowing, by genuinely having informed consent as the model of thought and decision making behind what we were doing, then we could reach a new position, something more interesting. And I'm glad we stuck with it, because to be honest, I wasn't sure. I kind of felt there was maybe something that we could go astray here, and we could lose the whole kind of Zen Peacemaker spirit. And is this a good idea to change things so much? But I stuck with it, and as steward, I encouraged other people to stick with it. And then finally, we did it. We reached the compromise, and it became a creative part of the way we work together in Manchester. So consensus decision-making, informed consent decision-making, sociocracy is a very powerful tool for ending up with outcomes you wouldn't have expected to find otherwise. And I heartily recommend it to you. And I hope you work with it. I hope you are frustrated by it. I hope you play with it and see what happens in your own circles when you really, really, really value each other, and value each other enough to want to know what you all really, truly want individually and together. And I can't think of a song to sing after this one, so that will do for this morning. Goodbye.